When the clock strikes midnight, the world begins to unveil its hidden secrets. Welcome to Echoes of Midnight, where tales of terror lurk in the shadows and the silence of the night comes alive. Prepare yourself to journey through dark realms, unravel chilling mysteries, and face the unknown. Alex had always been fascinated by abandoned places. His heart raced whenever he thought about them. The thrill of exploring the unknown, of stepping into the remnants of lives once lived, always sparked a sense of excitement deep within him. So, when he heard the rumors about the old house at the edge of town, he couldn't resist. "I had to see it for myself," Alex whispered to himself, standing in front of the rotting gates that led to the house. The house stood silently in the distance, partially hidden by thick, overgrown trees. The windows were boarded up, and the door, once grand, now hung loosely on its hinges, as though it had been abandoned long ago. The air was thick with a sense of decay, the stillness broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. "I wonder what's inside," Alex muttered, stepping cautiously through the broken gate. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he made his way closer, his breath quickening with each step. The closer he got to the house, the stronger the feeling of dread became. There was something about this place that felt wrong, something buried deep in the walls that whispered of forgotten horrors. Alex couldn't explain it, but his instincts told him to turn back. Yet something pulled him forward. "I've come this far," Alex said, more to reassure himself than anything else. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open, its hinges groaning loudly in protest. Inside, the house was cold and dark, the only light coming from the faint moonbeams that filtered through the cracks in the boarded windows. Dust hung in the air, untouched by time. Every corner of the room seemed to hold a secret, every shadow hiding something that Alex couldn't see but could almost feel. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. The silence answered him, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, a soft whisper seemed to brush against the back of his neck, like a breath of wind, or was it something else? Alex spun around, but there was nothing. The whisper, however, lingered in the air, a chilling presence that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The whisper continued to echo in Alex's ears, growing louder and more insistent. It was as if the house itself was alive, trying to communicate with him. Each step he took seemed to be met with another whisper, and soon, it felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. "What do you want?" Alex whispered, his voice trembling. The room around him felt colder with each passing moment, and his breath became visible in the air. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to run as fast as he could, but his feet were glued to the spot. The shadows in the room shifted, moving as though they were alive. "I can't stay here," he muttered under his breath, but his legs wouldn't obey. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang, locking him inside. The whisper turned into a low growl, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the walls. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, his pulse racing as he turned around to face the room. The shadows grew longer and more menacing, creeping towards him like hungry creatures. "Who's there?" Alex shouted, fear creeping into his voice. The shadows stopped, but the growling didn't. It echoed all around him, growing louder until it filled his mind with a deafening roar. He stumbled backward, his back hitting the wall, and that's when he saw it. The shape in the corner of the room, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. Alex's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the figure in the corner of the room. It was tall, almost human, but its limbs were twisted in unnatural angles, and its eyes glowed like embers in the dark. The growl had stopped, replaced by a silence that was even more terrifying. What are you?" Alex stammered, unable to tear his eyes away from the creature. The figure didn't move, simply stood there watching him. Alex could feel the weight of its gaze, a coldness that seemed to seep into his very soul. He wanted to run, to escape, but his legs were still frozen in place. "I don't know what you want, but I'm not afraid of you," Alex shouted, though his voice was shaking. The creature didn't respond. Instead, it took a slow, deliberate step forward, its movements fluid and unsettling. Alex's heart raced in his chest as the creature drew closer. Every instinct told him to run, but his body refused to move. He could feel the air growing colder, heavier, as if the very room was suffocating him. "I will leave. Please, just let me go," Alex pleaded, his voice barely more than a whisper now. The creature stopped just a few feet away from him, its eyes never leaving his face. And then, in a voice that wasn't a voice at all, it spoke to him. The creature's voice seemed to reverberate in the very air around Alex, though it wasn't something his ears could hear. It was more of a feeling deep inside his mind, as though the walls themselves were speaking to him. "What do you want from me?" Alex's voice quivered as he fought to hold on to his composure. The creature didn't move, but its presence seemed to grow heavier, suffocating. The walls themselves seemed to close in, the whispers from before now a constant hum, a reminder of the horrors buried within this place. Alex felt as though he was being pulled into the very fabric of the house, as if the house itself had become alive and was consuming him. "I don't want any part of this," Alex gasped, his voice becoming a desperate plea. Suddenly, the room grew colder. Alex could see his breath in the air, the chill creeping into his bones. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to twist and writhe, as though they were alive, as though they were waiting for something. "Let me go," Alex shouted, his eyes desperately scanning the room for an escape. But the door was nowhere in sight. The whispers grew louder, echoing around him, filling every corner of the room. Then, as if on cue, the whispers stopped. An unnatural silence filled the room, and the temperature dropped to a freezing level. Alex felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The shadows shifted, and from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A dark figure moving towards him. Who are you?" Alex whispered, his voice breaking. The figure stepped closer, its form becoming clearer. It was tall, its limbs unnaturally long, and its face, if it could even be called a face, was a mask of darkness. It was as though the very air around it had bent, conforming to the shape of its twisted presence. "I will leave. Just let me go," Alex begged, his voice barely more than a whisper. The dark figure inched closer, and Alex's heart raced, his chest tightening as the air around him grew colder with every step. The room seemed to distort, the walls stretching and contracting like a living thing. It was as though the house itself was breathing, responding to the creature's presence. Alex's mind was spinning, his thoughts a blur, but there was one question that refused to leave his mind. What did it want from him? "Please tell me," Alex shouted, unable to contain the rising fear in his voice. The figure remained silent, its eyes glowing brighter as it stepped into the center of the room. Alex could feel the weight of its gaze as though it was pulling at something deep within him, something he didn't understand. His legs trembled beneath him, the fight or flight instinct warring within him, but his body refused to obey. "Why don't you just leave me alone?" Alex cried, his voice breaking. The creature's eyes flashed a vivid red, and the air seemed to thicken, suffocating him. Alex could feel the walls of the room pressing against him, as though they were closing in. It was then that he heard the voice, low, cold, and unsettling, whispering to him from within his mind.
"You're not supposed to be here."
The words sent a chill down Alex's spine, and he gasped for breath as if the air itself had turned to ice. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears as the walls seemed to close in around him. The shadows shifted and danced along the corners of the room, as if they were waiting for something. Alex tried to scream, but no sound came out. His body was paralyzed, unable to move. "Why are you doing this?" Alex whispered desperately, tears welling in his eyes. The creature's form wavered, as though it was flickering between dimensions. Its face was not one face, but many, all twisted together in a grotesque blend of horror. The voices of those who had once lived in the house seemed to echo within it, calling out in pain and sorrow. "Tell me what happened here," Alex begged, his voice trembling with fear and confusion. The creature paused, its eyes narrowing as if it was deciding whether to answer. The silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive. Then, without warning, it moved. Its long, twisted limbs reached out, and Alex's heart skipped a beat as the creature placed a cold, bony hand on his shoulder.
"You can't leave
until the story is finished." With those words, the room seemed to shift, the air growing thick with memories. The walls of the house, long forgotten, began to show their true nature. It was as if the house itself was revealing its secrets, whispering of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. "No, this isn't real," Alex murmured, his voice barely audible, as the world around him seemed to dissolve into shadows and whispers. But it was real. Alex could feel it, could sense the weight of the past pressing in on him. The whispers became louder, and the walls around him began to pulse as if alive. The creature's hand on his shoulder tightened, its grip cold and unyielding. "What is it you want from me?" Alex asked again, his voice shaking. The creature stepped back, allowing Alex to see the walls of the house, once hidden beneath layers of time and decay, now glowing with faint symbols, etched deep into the stone. Each symbol seemed to pulse, glowing brighter and brighter with each passing second. Alex's mind raced, trying to understand what he was seeing. Is this the curse?" Alex whispered, dread filling his chest. The creature nodded slowly, its expression unreadable. It pointed towards the glowing symbols on the wall, each one revealing fragments of a dark history. Alex saw images of people, faces twisted in terror, bodies contorted in unnatural positions. A family who had once lived here, trapped by their own actions. The whispers began to fill his mind with the fragmented thoughts of those who had suffered. "The curse, it's what binds us here," Alex whispered, understanding dawning on him. The room seemed to grow darker as the walls closed in even further. Alex felt the weight of the past pressing down on him, as if he were becoming part of the story. He tried to move, but his body refused to obey. The house had taken hold of him, and there was no way out.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.